Good morning everyone and welcome back to Piccadilly. Now just thought I'd show you this before we move on, and this HST is pushing. Listen. Okay, hopefully you can hear the motor in there even though this is not sound fitted. Right, I'll let you watch that go through and you can see it hasn't derailed. Now what I did do on this particular one is I put the NEM pockets, Rapido couplings back onto the Locomotive, because as I said it would need the standard length couplings, and look, it's just gone through that double slip, no problems at all, as does the whole train. Across the single slip, and working its way around, as you can see. So it just goes to show that the slightly longer couplings do make a difference. So if you want to get one for your HST, I think Chris said he might be putting out an HST pack, but otherwise you would need a set of standard length couplings on this one. All right, now on to today's subject, which is the spring mounted version, which are these. Okay, few things to explain before we fit them, but join me on the carpet where I'll show you. Right, now what sort of stock are we talking about here? Well, I think we're talking about coaches where we come to the close type, because that's what these are that I've got. I haven't got any of the standard type, so it's just the close ones I'm talking about in this particular video. I might do one on the other one, we'll see what happens. So it's really going to be coaching stock, but what I'm hoping to do is to get my structure gauging train sorted out, in which case I would need to fit them to this. Now it may work, it may not, but what this is definitely not suitable for is wagons like this, because you've got buffers here, and two sets of buffers coming together would probably cause buffer lock. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to see how we go about fitting some of these, but there is something I do need to point out to you first. So let's have a look at that. Now, I don't know about you, but I've come across a number of situations where this type of coupling, which is what we're talking about with the little spring in there, they come undone and the springs fly all over the place, and they're to be gone forever. And sometimes the couplings drop and I can't find them either. So I've got coaches like this one, for example, with no coupling on it, because I can't find either the spring or the coupling, Rapido coupling to go with it. So it'd be nice to see if I can get this one up and running again. Now, you can go to companies like BR Lines, and Bob there is absolutely brilliant. He's got a mine of information, and he stocks the original springs for these old Graham Farish. That's BR Lines. He has got a website, but you can't order off it. It's this is what we've got, phone up if you want it type thing. He does show, as far as I think, he's got stock levels on there as far as I'm aware, but don't quote me on that, I might be wrong. So I phoned him up and said, look, have you got some more springs? And he said, yeah, and I've also got some stronger springs, which you might find useful too. Now, I'm going to look which one it is. Yes, this one. Now, hopefully you can see the difference between that spring and that spring. Now, look at the coupling. Now that is a stronger spring and it's got next to no movement in it at all. Whereas that one, that's one of the original springs, which he does stock, and there's a lot of movement in that. Now, what I've discovered is the Hunt couplings are not suitable for this spring. It is too strong. And what happens is there is next to no articulation in that spring head. Yeah? So when it goes to go around corners, it can't. Now, I have relayed that back to Chris, and he's working on an articulated coupling. Whether it's successful in Engage is another matter, but do be aware the new these strong springs will not be appropriate with the current range of hunt couplings. So please, please, please do be aware of what you need to do first of all is pull the bogey off, because you'll find it a lot easier if you do that. Now, these springs are incredibly delicate, and if you're in the slightest bit clumsy with it, say bye-bye to it, because it will flick from one side of the room, and if it gets buried in the carpet, you may not be able to find it again, particularly if your carpet's a sort of beigey colour or goldy colour. Yeah, so you've got to be very careful. Now, what you've got here is like a bayonet fitting. The back of this is longer that way than it is that way, if that makes sense. So what I suggest you do is put your fingers top and bottom of the coupling. This coupling, because it went out of shot, you're turning the coupling and then very gently lifting it out. And then when you release it very slowly. Right, I'm sorry about that. The gimbal decided it was going to run out of power, as you probably realise with it shooting up in the air. But hopefully you've got enough out of that last little clip to realise that you should now have the bogey, the coupling and the spring. Okay, now remember, this is the soft spring you want, the original type. So what do I want? I'm going to sort of put that one to one side, take one of the hunt couplings, and as I did before, if I can get it back again, fit it in the pair. Now the spring, I suggest you put it on something sharp and pointy. Obviously don't cut yourself if you do shoot something sharp. Now you may see inside there is a pin. Now you're trying to get the spring on that pin. So I'm putting my finger up against the back of that there, and then put the pin, the spring, onto it, and that's just dropped straight on. You've got here then, if you notice there's the pin, and I've suggested to Chris putting a longer pin on that. But you put the pin into the spring, again keeping it either side, and very gently push the coupling into the gap, and it might need a bit of wiggling to get it in. It's not gone in. I did have somebody comment last week and say, oh sheesh, that's really quite difficult to get them in. Welcome to Engage. This is what it's like. It's nothing to do with these, I have to be honest. It's just as much of a faff fitting these. So, you know, it's nothing to do with nothing to do with the hunts, I'm afraid, not on this occasion. But again, I'm trying to push that in, get it into that point there, it's ready to go in, and then ease it inside. Now you'll see that it's inside, and the back plate is now this direction. So I've now got to turn it through 90 degrees, keeping my fingers top and bottom on that cage, if you like, and turn it. There you go. And it's now in. If you don't do it, if you don't keep your fingers there, it can and will shoot off in any direction. So please, please, please be warned. What I'm hoping is that you may be able to find the newer style with the hunt couplings may run with the older style, but do be aware that the geometry of the way that the couplings turn is different. Okay, looking for one of the newer type. There you go. There you go. If I show you that now, look, the geometry is different. I hope you can see that. The coupling on the newer style stays further out and it stays parallel to the end of the coach. I hope I'm making sense there. Look. Yes? Whereas this style, the coupling goes in. It takes a much bigger arc. Right, that was fiddly to say the least, but that's Engage. That's nothing to do with Chris and what the product is produced. But I do want to point out something to you. The structure gauging wagon I have managed to get it to work. Although, having said that, the closed couplings that I do have would have caused a problem at this end. If you notice, there is a pipe coming off the back. I don't know what it's for, but it's there nevertheless. Now, I managed to have this long coupling, and I can't even remember what carriage it came off, to be honest with you. The bogies are the same, so I'm going to work with that. But this particular pocket here, or coupling housing, whatever you want to call it, gives a much longer throw. So from that point of view, that is going to work for me. So I'll get this train on the track, and we'll have a look. There it is on the track, and we'll look at it running in a minute. Now, but just before you go any further, I would normally run this train with this Colas 37, but instead I'm going to have to use the 66. Now, on a compatibility front, I don't know whether you ever tried to change the bogies on the 66, but it's a spring. And it's it took me by surprise a bit, because it's the only spring locomotive that I've come across. But you have to take the bogie frame out, and again, if you take a screwdriver and put it in there and literally just go pop, the bogie will come off. You then have to remove the bogie frame by literally just twisting down at the coupling end, and it pops off. And then from in there, you will gain access to the spring. I'm not going to show you how I do this, unless, of course, you want me to, but I don't really want to taking the coupling out and putting it back in again, because it was a little bit difficult. So, but that's the nature of the beast, I'm afraid. Whereas the 37, it's in the same way as I said about the geometry of the coupling. If you notice on the 66, there is a lot of play, which is what you need. Whereas on the 37, there's not a lot of play. And because the couplings lock, end on, if you pardon the expression, it causes the bogie just to slip the tracks, and you end up with one wheel going around the track. Right, so there we are, we're ready to go. So let's go back to the controller and put it to about a third speed. Now, I have to say, the nature of this old Farish stuff, the GRAFAR made in England pool stuff, isn't good. That's my experience of it. I've had a lot of problems with it, and that's with just the regular couplings. So one of the reasons I'm running this very slowly, because I want to make sure it first just gets around the track. Good so far. Now, please remember, this is with a mixture of the different types of couplings. We've got the old and the new in there. We've got. Now, that's one of the new type of couplings gone. Actually, that looks like new to new. So we'll have a look at that. Okay, that's been a bit of a palaver. Now, you might notice that the train is considerably shorter, and I've removed the two offending coaches, very naughty coaches. Now, notice this is the newest style. Now, despite changing the couplings, or, adjusting them so that one was on I still couldn't get it to work on this occasion. Now, I have had problems with this train in the past, with these carriages in the past, so I can't sensibly blame the Hunt couplings for that. So I've removed them and spared you the pain of watching it derail. Now, so we're going around with 3 coaches and the wagon. Right, let's put it to half speed. Now, this is all spring type on solely, because it's the older stock. And the wagon, even though it's an N-Trains kit, it still sits on the body of a VGA wagon. So that's a new wagon, but it still uses the spring type. So you can see with the 66, that's pulling quite nicely. Okay, let's ramp up the speed a bit now, because I haven't done this. Let's see what it's going to do. Just tilt you down a tad. Right, let's take it up to full speed and see what happens. I mean, it might be a disaster and it might all end up in a pile on the floor. We just don't know. I hope not. The coaches I'm less bothered about, but the 66, well, they're not cheap, are they? But actually, at full speed, that seems to be running quite nicely. Okay, so on the next revolution, what I want to do is stop it and have it going round the S-bend track. Right, let's take it round the S-bends. Now you have to forgive me, I thought I'd filmed this and I'd come to edit the video and I realised I hadn't, so I've had to come back and do this bit again. So that's why we've got some strong lights now, because it's a bit later in the day. But as you can see, and I've got the power probably about 2/3. And it seems to be coping quite well. So there shouldn't be any issues going into the main line there. Back round again, over the single slip, no problems at all. Remember, I've removed the tunnel for the time being. And back over the double slip and the point arrangement. So you can see that's going well. Let's ramp it up to full speed. Now hopefully this won't end up on a pile on the floor. I mean, to be honest with you, if I wasn't confident I wouldn't do it. Yeah, no issues whatsoever, going round absolutely beautifully. Right, got the 66 in reverse. Now, I am a little bit concerned about buffer lock between the 66 and that first carriage. I think, have we got a derailment? Yes, we have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can find another locomotive that has got a longer reach, and we'll take it. Right, well this is turning out to be quite a learning curve, there's no doubt about that. Now, the buffer lock issue, I tried to see if I got another locomotive that would have a longer reach on the coupling. Now, the only locomotives that I can fit the hunt couplings to are the dap hole ones. So that's the 66, the 67, just there. The 57 I've got, the 47, they're exactly the same as the 37. They've got fixed coupling, fixed bogies, so they wouldn't be suitable. And I think on the locomotive front, unless I go to the steam, that's as much as I've got. So that left me with the 66, but then I come up with an idea. I've had a number of couplings where the magnets have come off. I decided I'd slip one of the magnets in between the couplings, and that's given me a slightly longer reach, which is an option if you find you need a standard coupling and you only want one or something like that, say buying a whole pack. Right, let's get it going again. So I'm only going to put it on, well, a third speed. Oh, we're on, right, let's get it going. Hopefully it'll stay on the track now. Right, have I finally got this running properly? Well, we're going over the double slip there, over the big massive junction crossover, going up towards the single slip. No issues, it didn't even stop, which was what the 66 started to do until I gave it a minor service. Will it get through there? Yes. Coming out the shed, negotiating the point out the shed and the very, very sharp third radius loop. And we come back over to the crossover again. Well, it looks like we've finally got this train running. Now, you have to ask yourself the question then, are the hunt couplings, the spring type, any good? Well, you can see the train's running. It is running. In fact, let's speed it up a bit and see if it goes. Let's take it to 3/4 speed. The train is staying together. It's not broken apart. It is negotiating the points. It's running well. I'm going to whack it up to full speed and see. Full speed, have a look. Now, I might be taking my life in my own hands here, but let's just see if it does negotiate this. Beautiful. Oh. Well, I think we can forgive it that. Full speed, and we're expecting it to do everything. That's, you know. So, are these spring-type hunt couplings any good? Well, yes. I really do think they are. And you see, the thing is, you've got to remember, with the spring-type couplings comes the older GRAFAR stock. And that's where the problems come. Because when it was made, even back into the early 2000s, this stuff being made in Poole in the UK wasn't anywhere near as good as what the stuff we're getting through from China now. And you've got to remember that, I mean, even those coaches that I've got there, they didn't even come with an interior. They were incredibly light. They did not have a weight in them. I've had to literally pack them with weights. I mean, if I opened up, and I'm not going to, but if I opened up how much weight is in that one and that one, you would be horrified how much is in there. And I've had to do that just purely to get them to run properly. I managed to get some interiors from BR Lines. So if you've got any older stock, they sell interiors for those stock. You've got to get your stock running properly in the first place. I suppose the comparison is a little bit like running on DC to DCC. And people will always say if your trains run well on DC, they will run well on DCC. And I think it's exactly the same with the hunt couplings. So don't expect a badly running train to start suddenly running properly purely because you put magnetic couplers on it. It won't necessarily solve any issues. If you've got back-to-back problems, they need to be sorted out. If you've got bogie articulation problems, in other words, the bogie doesn't move in different directions, that's got to be sorted out. These couplings will not do that for you. So it's all about laying your track properly and etc, etc, etc. And then once you've got a decent running train, the hunt couplings come in and they take to their own. Because if you do have a derailment, which you've seen a fair few this afternoon in this video, it is so much easier to pull the train apart. Whereas if it was with the Rapido couplings, i.e. that type of coupling head, that's the wrong fit in mine, but it would be difficult to separate the train. That's when the problems come with the springs flying out, because then the couplings rotate in the housing and they fly off, you know, and so the hunt couplings do stop that. So they're doing a much better job than you think they are, to be honest. So am I impressed? Yeah, I am. Do bear in mind this spring type now comes in standard length, and you will be able to fit that to wagons, i.e. like that. Not that, because that's got the newer style of couplings on it, the NEM pockets. So I'm going to leave the video there. The top video will be the previous hunt couplings session where I was testing the HST coaches and the close fitting for the Mark IIIs. And the bottom video will be something I think will go for some exhibitions on this particular one. We haven't had any exhibitions for quite a while, and I don't think there's any likely to come, so I'll pop in a video for an exhibition. All right, take care everybody. Bye for now.